What are you looking at?
We got to.
What is up, guys? East Coast Octane here. So I've had a subscriber talk to me about some car stuff because I'd posted the video of the car completed, and it had me kind of thinking about a good video topic because he was asking, some specific stuff about my build. Also, he was just kind of looking to get into modifying cars, build a cool car, and just looking how to kind of get started with that. I figured it might not be bad to make a video and just go through kind of how to get started modifying cars, because you're looking at cars and then you go online, you look at videos of badass cars and crazy builds, and then, like, for example, my video showing what I've done to this car. It's kind of a quick video that shows a bunch of cool stuff, but it doesn't really depict the amount of time and different stuff I got stuck on and how much work I really had to do to get the car running the way it was. And so I'm just going to give you guys, at least this is my experience working on cars, kind of working with people that are new to working on cars. So I'll give you what my experience has been with people who want to get into working on cars. And, I'm not the end-all be-all. I'm just a guy on the internet with a YouTube channel. But I want to talk to you just basics of, if you want to get into working on cars, a good way to go about it. So the first thing, most people, you look online and stuff, and you see like crazy engine swaps, turbos, and all that stuff. Before you even think about doing that, first thing is, so you probably have a car, right? You either have your first car or you went and bought a car. Doesn't really matter what car it is. Number one, if you want to start working on cars and like getting into them, start with basic maintenance. Now, a lot of people are already changing their oil and stuff when they get into that, but that's really important. I think a lot of people skip that step. They want to go straight into like some go fast parts. Let me throw a turbo on this. Let me pick out a sweet motor to put in here. But you got to look at the whole car. Have you been changing your oil every 3,000 miles? Are you using full synthetic oil? Go through the car. The engine's a good place to start. Make sure you've had a recent oil change. You got all your fluids changed. Honestly, I've learned more just doing maintenance on my cars than I have doing crazy motor swaps and stuff. So that's always a good place to start. Check your filters, make sure your filter's clean, fuel filter, stuff like that. Just basic stuff that you can do to make sure your car's running well and get experience working on your car. So you can always take out your factory manual out of the glove box to see what the maintenance interval is. See if it's time to do some of that maintenance. Look up how to do it and see if you can do it. If you can not take your car to a shop, that's number one. Just learn how to do stuff. Even if it feels like something that might be over your head, like say you need a timing belt done, try to do it yourself. Look up step by step how to do it. Start there. And then once you've gone through your car and you've done all the maintenance, you've done your brake pads, maybe you had to change some bushings out or something, get all that stuff done first before you try to go to aftermarket. Because that's when you see a bunch of cars out that have freaking nice wheels and tires, but they run like crap because somebody spent all their money making it look good, or trying to put this or that performance part on. They forgot about the basic stuff, like making sure your wheel bearings are good, making sure your tie rods are tight, all that stuff. And you're going to learn so much more starting there. Another thing to think about is tools. Before you start spending a ton of money on go fast parts and all that stuff, make sure you have the tools to put it in. You have good tools that you can use to work on your car. It doesn't have to be a whole garage full of Snap-on tools, but you need a basic ratchet set. You need probably a jack, a couple jack stands, and then, your basic hand tools, screwdrivers and stuff. And make sure you get one of these, a torque wrench. You can always, for your car, you can always get a Haynes manual or a Helms manual, which is just a manual that tells you how to take apart and put together most of the stuff on your car. It's really helpful to have. I've got one for every car I've had. I even have one for my bike, just as a go-to. You can go look through that before you start a job, so you have an idea of what you're doing. And you don't have to have the nicest tools. I mean, go to Harbor Freight, whatever you need to do to get some basic tools that'll get the job done. A lot of people, they want to go straight to the engine. This is what they want to modify. But for me, that's not the best place to start, because this is the most expensive thing to modify is under the hood, right? And most of the time, you're going to dump a lot of money in it, and the power gains aren't going to be that significant. And also, this is the best way to get in over your head is to pull an engine out of a car, start cutting stuff up before you really have a good handle on working on that car. So if you want to get started in modifying a car, personally, I think, so you've gotten your basic maintenance down, I think the next place to start is your suspension and braking. Because honestly, that is the one thing that will change the characteristic and feel of your car more than anything else. You can throw an intake at it. You can even add 100 horsepower to your car. The thing that's going to really make it feel like a different car is the suspension. You can put a bunch of power at it, and if it can't handle it, it's gonna feel wrong. And the thing is, if you start with your suspension and stuff, that can give you time to kind of decide what you want to do with the engine. The suspension and brakes and wheels and tires and that stuff, that'll support any kind of other modifications you do to your car. So if you start there, that kind of builds a foundation for anything else you're going to do. Yeah, like one of the best things to do with suspension, a lot of times, especially if you have an older car, it probably has some blown out suspension anyway. Start with trying to get like a good sport spring and strut combination. And honestly, that stuff's not that difficult. You can look up in a manual how to change them. It's normally a lot like changing the OEM ones. Like this car I talked about had a suspension on it, and it's going to make a big difference. Another thing to look at when you're in there is a lot of times people overlook bushings. Bushings can make a big difference, especially, I mean, on this car is 23 years old or something. The bushings were shot. You got to change all those. And it's a big pain in the ass, but it makes a big difference. Another thing, brakes. A lot of people try to go overkill on brakes. You know, they want to go out and get a big Brembo brake kit or something on it. And for most of us, that's just not necessary. So my recommendation for brakes on any car is that, like, think about it this way. With your OEM braking setup, you can probably lock all four wheels, right? Even with a sport tire on. With most cars, especially if it's something like this Z that's already kind of a sports car, you can put the pedal down and it's going to lock all four wheels and start sliding unless you have ABS, but we won't get into that. So normally the factory brakes are pretty substantial. What you're trying to do is limit the amount they fade, like when you're up on a mountain or something. My recommendation for brakes, it's probably about time to do them anyway, right? So you're going to get some nice blank rotors, just OEM rotors. Don't get slotted or drilled, because believe it or not, slotted and drilled rotors in the OEM size with OEM calipers actually reduces your braking because you do not have as much surface area to grip. When you get to really big brake kits, then that's where the slots and holes and everything kind of work together with everything else to give you better braking and better cooling for the brake. You don't need that with your OEM ones. They're not. It's not enough. So you want to have all that surface area to use. Get a set of nice like Hawk pads or something, some stickier pads, and then go ahead and if you're not already doing it, run .4 fluid, and that'll give you a little bit more resistance to the heat soaking of your brakes. And then if you really want to, while you're in there, maybe it's time to change the soft lines out. I know I've had to do it on this car, change out all the rubber lines. You can put braided lines in, it'll give you a little bit better pedal feel. But there's no point in getting going overkill, you know? Maybe if you start doing track days and stuff, you'll get to the point where you're like, oh shit, I need better brakes. But don't worry about it yet. Start with the basics, you know? What I just talked about for brakes is really just doing maintenance, but just adding slightly better parts in. So you're getting to know the car, you're putting in some better stuff. Another thing that I always see is like people put all this money into suspension, and then they've got mismatched used tires all over the car. Get a set of matching sport tires, because you can have like the nicest handling car ever, and then you put a set of shitty tires on it, it's not going to handle well. It's just not. That's the one thing that has the most effect on your car's handling is the tires, actually, not the actual suspension. The other stuff kind of helps the tires, right? So maybe you've put a little bit of suspension work on, you've done your wheels, you've done your brakes. Maybe you put a set of wheels and tires on it, help change the look a little bit. Get some nice lightweight wheels and tires, and your shit will be good. So put those on there. You've taken care of that. And then you're probably sitting a little lower. Your car probably looks pretty good, right? And then a lot of times by then, you've probably gotten some more experience. You've been talking to other car guys, maybe some guys that have cars like yours. And you've kept up with your maintenance, right? Your clutch is working good. Everything's bled out. New fluids everywhere. Do some engine work. I know everybody's itching to do engine work. So a lot of times, I mean, if you just want to start out with something, easiest thing, of course, everybody wants to do is a nice intake and an exhaust, right? And if you pick the right exhaust, it's something that could carry with the car and support other mods on the car later on. So that's not a bad thing to have, and of course, that sounds cool. Everybody wants a car that sounds cool. Some little bolt-on mods, kind of tuning mods to the engine. But then you're going to have a much better idea once you've kind of worked on the car a little bit. You've kept up with the engine maintenance. You've kept up with the chassis maintenance of what kind of, if you want to do an engine swap or if you want to do, turbo or something, you can start doing your research there on what you could do with that car to give you the power that you want. Another thing, when you're looking at building a car, I think a lot of people kind of skip this step. They just start buying parts and looking at this. Before you do anything, make a plan, right? Decide what you want that car to become. Now, obviously, all of us are always buying parts here and there and modifying this and that. But if you're going to do something like this, like I sat down and said, all right, I've got my Civic. I want to make my Civic have about this much horsepower. I want the suspension to be about like this. I want to still have air conditioning. I still want to have this. I want to have this kind of sound system in it. And then I put together a budget. And actually, before I start building a car, I make an Excel spreadsheet. And I sit down and I pick out every single part, put hyperlinks in, all that stuff, so you get organized with it. You know exactly what you're doing. And that way you have a budget so you don't end up saying, oh, this will only cost, $3,000 to do this because the engine's not that much, this isn't that much. But if you sit down and plan it out ahead of time, then you have a spreadsheet that tells you how much you're actually going to be spending. You can stick to that budget. So especially if you have a wife or girlfriend that's paying attention to how much you're spending on your car, you can pull that up and say, I'm spending exactly this much. Yeah, you budget it out, and you'll be good. You'll be able to build a cool car, maybe meet your power goals. And don't forget about tuning. That's not always something you can do yourself. You might have to go to a dyno to do that, which is expensive. I'm about to do that with the Civic over here. So the reason I say to kind of start slow like that and maybe don't just jump into a big build, because I've seen it happen a lot of times where somebody maybe doesn't calculate how much money is needed or just doesn't quite comprehend all the steps that are needed to put together a certain motor or a turbo or whatever it is, and they ask you to come help them. You show up at their house. They've got their car sitting there, no engine in it, a bunch of stuff everywhere, and they're lost because they don't know yet, or they didn't plan it well, and they didn't realize how much work was really involved. They get in over their head and they get stuck, and then the car just kind of fades away, other stuff gets in the way, and then they never finish because they kind of bit off more than they could chew, which is why I say to start with the basic stuff, get to know your car really well. Then after you've gotten used to the car and got some other, stuff set up on it, then you can move on to working on, something like this where you've got a real custom setup that nobody else, well, not a lot of other people have. Plenty of people have K-swaps, let's be honest. I hope that's kind of helpful just to some guys or girls who are kind of looking to get into cars. And of course, all of us want to go out and have like the baddest car on the street. It's not always the best place to start. It's a lot better to, take your car, get to know your car, doing the basic stuff, get it set up right, and then you can go into some bigger builds and stuff, especially if it's a car you drive every day, You say, oh, I want to turbo this, do that. You might get into the point where you've got a car that you're trying to drive every day that's like halfway built and all that. My recommendation, take your car, take your time, do little stuff here and there. Always keep up on the maintenance. I can't say that enough because I see so many people that want to have the wheels and the have intakes and all this stuff, but they haven't done an oil change in 5 months, and their transmission grinds and all kinds of little stuff like that should really be the first priority to keep your car running well. Then the second priority is adding the go-fast parts and the performance stuff in there. Yeah, if y'all are wondering, a friend of mine lives with me, and he has this Z, so we might use it in some videos. It's a fun car. It's just naturally aspirated. It's not turbo. But both of us like our 90s sports cars, so we might look at this car some just because it's a fun little car. I mean, he doesn't have a lot done to it. He likes to keep it kind of just a basic sporty car. It's got a ton of miles on it. I mean, if you take care of a car, it'll keep going for a bunch of miles. It's just a little 2-seater, rear-wheel drive. It's a fun car. I always like these. Tight engine bay, though. Pain in the butt to work on. There's no room for anything in here. And then, of course, you guys know my Civic. We'll have an update soon on the Civic because I'm actually taking it to the dyno this Saturday. We're gonna adjust the tune a little bit. Because as of last time, you remember, I just had kind of a basic street tune on it, like a base map that was just adjusted a little bit just for safety. There's definitely some RPM ranges where I'm not getting full power. So we're going to take it, and hopefully I'll be able to post up some dyno graphs maybe of how this thing's running, have a decent amount of power to the wheels. And then later on, we'll worry about working with my the local shop. We might start throwing some nitrous at it or something to add a little more power. because that's how the game goes. Once you start adding power, it's an addiction. You always want more. All right, guys. Well, I hope this is helpful to somebody. As always, check me out on Facebook if you have some questions. I answer Facebook messages like instantly. So feel free to find me on Facebook. Ask me questions about any kind of cars. I mean, obviously, I know more about Hondas than anything else, but I've worked on other cars. And thanks for watching. If this was helpful, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see some of my other shenanigans on motorcycles. Yeah, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to go on and get some shit done because I'm still kind of moving in. As you can see, my bike has a really great parking spot. Nice view of the driveway. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we'll probably be back to most of my videos being from Charlotte for a little while. This is the new place if people haven't figured that out yet. All right. Catch you guys in the next video. Probably back in Charlotte doing some stuff. All right. Peace out.